even though the situations are different, kids really weren't different. You know, everybody kept asking me, what's the difference? I go, the kids all want the same thing. They want to be loved. They want to be supported. They want to be coached. They want to be taught. They want to be held accountable. They want it all. I found that that group of kids from all those different schools, they all really wanted the same thing. And that's why I love football, is because football delivers those things to them. It gives them that vessel to experience all those things I just mentioned and that they all want. And they still all want. They wanted it when I started. They still want it now. Welcome to this week's episode of Inside the Headset, presented by CoachComm. This week, we're joined by Michael Christensen, the former head coach of Carson High School in California. In this conversation, Coach Christensen discusses his coaching journey, the uniqueness of coaching high school football in Los Angeles, and his involvement with the AFCA. But first, a word from CoachComm.
Deuce left, check with me. If they're in quarters match, we're going to Pittsburgh or Ohio.
They're in zero.
Let's go Hippo, Seattle, wide choice. If we call the protection right, it's 6.
When a play call is the difference between winning and losing, your headset choice could be your most important decision. When the call counts, CoachComm is the only choice for clear, dependable communication. Visit CoachComm.com for more info.
We got it, guys. Good job.
Follow Inside the Headset on your favorite podcast platform and subscribe to our YouTube channel for exclusive content. If you enjoyed this episode, please give it a like and leave a review. It really helps others discover the show. We drop new episodes each week, so hit that follow button and never miss a moment. Now, let's get inside the headset with Coach Christensen.
Coach Christensen, how we doing, man?
Doing terrific, Mario. How you doing?
I'm excited about this one, man. Just really excited about sitting down with you. I've had the tremendous advantage. I don't know if many people know our relationship. I get hit up by coaches want to speak at the convention at times, and I'm like, I got a guy that handles all that, man. So, I've known you for a long time, and honestly, this was pretty cool for me to be able to sit back and kind of look at your background, see how long you've been, at the head of a program, and so I'm looking forward to diving in. But before we get rolling every podcast, we kind of asked a question: when did you know you wanted to be a part of this great profession?
Well, Mario, I think I ever since high school, I obviously played in high school and went on and played a little bit in college, and I enjoyed the experience so much. And all through that time, everybody goes, "Oh, you're going to be a coach. You're going to be a coach. You're going to be a coach." And I went to USC, and I wanted to pursue some other things, and everybody said go into business and this and that. And so I kind of tried everything in college, and finally settled on education and wanted to become a coach. So I talked to people, and they said, "Look, if you want to coach, you got to become a teacher in California."
Yeah.
And so I got my education degree and my credential and such, and I started there. So it's always been in there. I kind of didn't really dive into it until my first assisting job, when I got my first teaching job in downtown LA. And I was a walk-on coach at South Torrance High School for a gentleman named Don Morrow, who is still coaching today, and I was so fortunate to have him as my initial mentor, because playing the game is a lot different than coaching the game, and he's so good and so fundamentally sound and such a good person that it really helped me lay a good, successful foundation.
Now, a term, especially when I talk to my friends out that coach high school ball in Cali, or some of the divisional programs there in Cali, they use that term walk-on coach. Walk-on coach.
So out here, what that means is that usually we associate teaching jobs with coaching jobs. Well, if you're a lower level coach, like I started as a JV coach, there's no jobs for you at that school. There's no teaching jobs right away. So I was teaching at one school and then assist coaching at South High. And so I always knew that I wanted to become, and I eventually was hired as a teacher at South. So I was now an on-campus coach. So when Don Morrow left and became head coach at Maricosta, where he still is today, I took over for him at South Torrance High School, and I was an on-campus teacher. So that's obviously the norm and the way it should be, because you're around the kids all day and everything else.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, out here, it's man. Since I started to now, that's a whole different world. It's probably predominantly walk-on coaches in California now, because the teaching spots are not available, or whatever it might be. Or the coaches themselves don't have the proper credentials. So it's an interesting dynamic that I think has changed probably for the worse. I think I've always been a huge proponent of on-campus coaches. So, and I say that, and then at Carson High School, I wasn't an on-campus coach. I was teaching on another school because I was supposed to retirement, and I couldn't switch and all this other logistical stuff. But what I did make sure I did is I hired a ton of assistants that were actually on that campus.
Okay.
So it kind of bridged that gap for me. And it's the first time I've ever done that. I was extremely apprehensive about it. But I was fortunate. If you get the right guys and you have the right administration and things like that, it works out pretty well. And, it helped that I had been at the school before as a teacher. So all the current teachers knew me and they knew how to get a hold of me and communicate. So if there's ever any issues or things like that, we kind of avoided some big problems like that. But it's obviously the ideal situation is you're an on-campus coach.
Right.
And, California is not like Texas. You got to teach. We're teaching 4 or 5 classes and then coaching football after school or 6-period athletics or wherever it might be. You're not hired necessarily as a football coach. You're going to have to teach as well.
Yeah, for the head coaching position. Yeah,
for the head coaching position. Yeah, and then the head coach would try to get, if you're blessed, you get some walk-ons that are assistant coaches that are on campus. But that's a tough one. That's a tough one to find. You got to usually go out and get some walk-ons. From the area and maybe from your past experiences or relationships to come help and help coach the kids.
Yeah, that is definitely unique. Obviously, in Texas, what I'm familiar from a high school perspective, you do have to work on campus. You literally can't have. I mean, it's a rule where you can't have that. And I can only imagine some of the issues that maybe come with a guy maybe in the middle of the season that he gets a job somewhere else, he's got to go, or you don't get to know your players like you want to, the issues that they're dealing with. So as a head football coach, obviously this is something you dealt with quite a bit over your 30-year span of being a head ball coach. Absolutely.
And so it's another aspect is in Texas, one of the things they do well, and I always say they do it right. I mean Texas they do it right, is that they have the feeder programs. And that's something that's not quite as common out here. Some of our private schools now are kind of getting that and they're kind of developing that and things like that. But in the public school system out here, it's, you got several junior highs and those kids can go to different high schools and everything else. So it's a little bit of a challenge sometimes.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Didn't know that. Now, let's talk a little bit about your first coaching stop. You served as a head JV coach and varsity assistant at South High School. Your JV team was successful, 13-0-1. But sometimes that first job is very eye-opening. I know you had a little bit of an experience kind of prior to that, but what were some of the learning curves, especially with that JV group, which is super interesting? There are guys that aren't quite good enough to play varsity, guys that might have just touched football for the first time. What were some of the learning curves there for you?
Well, I think, and again, I was extremely fortunate to start where I started. South Torrance Don Morrow was a fantastic head coach. The administration was super supportive, and the kids, how do I say this? Were not very athletic.
Okay.
So what it made me do is learn how to coach.
Yeah.
It really, I couldn't get away with some stuff that maybe somebody else could with somebody that's just better than everybody else. We weren't better than anybody. And so it made me have to coach. And, it's interesting because my assistant, my co-coach with me is named Todd Croce, and he's at North Torrance, and he's still at North Torrance. And so we kind of came up and learned together from Morrow, and we still today emulate a lot of things that he did. But until you are in that position, you don't know the X's and O's and all that. Man, that's not what it is. As a young coach, you kind of think that's what it is.
Right.
I could do this, I could do that, and as you get into the situation, you realize it's the off the field stuff that's more important. And how do you handle kids? Kids have a lot of issues. Kids, just like everybody, with families and this and that. And so you have to love the kids up and make them know, you love them before you can really coach them hard. Right. And I think that's probably the biggest learning curve I had as a head coach, and then being responsible for assistant coaches. When you're an assistant coach, you're just worried about your group and you're, doing the best you can with those guys and everything else. And when you're head coach, you got to worry about everybody and what everybody's doing and everything else. And so that's the biggest challenges, I think. And I don't think there's anything that could replicate that except for experience.
Right.
You get in there and you kind of learn it. And you're going to make some mistakes, and you learn from your mistakes, and you continue on. So it was a very, very good situation for me because I had to learn how to coach.
Yeah. And clearly rewarding. You guys had success on the field. And within 3 years, in 92, you were named the head ball coach there at South High School.
Yeah.
That's fast, right?
It is, but it didn't seem like it,
Right.
it didn't seem like it. And we had a great time. I mean, but again, I had never coached. Right. I had never coached a day of my life. And so, to start at the JV level was perfect for me. Mm-hmm. And, a lot of these guys, and when I interview assistants now, I want to be a varsity. It's like, well, have you ever coached? No. I'm like, well, there's things you got to learn. Right. And so for me, that was a great learning situation. And again, I was surrounded by great coaches and a really good environment. So that worked out really, really well for me to be able to put in that time and kind of learn different things and how to handle a team. And again, how to get some experience with those problems that kids have either during school or at home or whatever it might be. And be there to support them. And then when your time comes, you think you're ready and you're not. you're never going to be ready, and I tell all my assistants, like, when you go become a head coach, you're ready, but you're not ready. You're going to have to learn some things and just be patient and hang in there. So it was very good for me. It was a very good situation.
Yeah. I've been fortunate enough here on this podcast to have, hundreds of head coaches, different levels, high school, college, professional. Yeah. And that's probably the commonality is like, no matter how prepared that you think you are, you can't. And it's not really anything you can do to help curve that. You can curve it a little bit, but you sit in that seat.
Well, and it's interesting, Mario, because even when you are a head coach, and I've been a head coach and I've been in a lot of different schools. Right. I'm not one to stay at a school for 30 years and this and that. I kind of always want to see, I want different experiences and different things like that. And so, even when you get that head coaching experience, when you go to another situation, you don't have experience in that situation. And something come up that you're like, wait a minute. I've been to really affluent high schools and I've been to inner city high schools, and it's a completely different animal. And the problems are different. And football's the same. The field's the same size, plays are the same, this and that.
Right.
That's not the things you have to adjust on. It's all the other things. So it's even when you get experience. Now I've been coaching 35 years now. I still learn stuff every year.
Yeah, absolutely.
Every year, something comes up that you haven't seen before.
Now, in that first 6 years, 92 to 98, you served as the head coach of South High. But, if you had to kind of name that chapter of your life in regards to just coaching and developing, what was your takeaway from those first 6 years being a head ball coach?
Oh man, that was a steep learning curve. Like I said, you learn. The thing I learned from that time is how important assistants are. And that's probably when I look back on my career, one of the most, obviously the players are everything, they're at the forefront of everything, but the assistant coaches are right there. Because this isn't a job a head coach is ever going to do by himself. He needs people, on the same page and marching to the same tune. And so, it was a very good learning curve for me to learn how to recruit the right coaches, how to get coaches that fit into the program and the style that I wanted, and treated the kids like I wanted, and coached them hard but loved them up, and all those things. And so for me, that was a really, really good experience again, because we had to be very fundamentally sound, and I needed coaches that were fundamentally sound. And I think going out and having that experience for those 6 years was terrific. It was terrific. It was a great experience for me.
Now, you may mention that you're not a guy that's going to sit around in a program for 30 years. You like changing the scenery just a little bit. So within those first 6 years, you take a new job there at Lake High School in 98. What led to that decision? What was the process like? Interview process, all that good stuff.
Yeah, so in 98, I took the Lakewood job, and there's a couple different reasons. One is that my commute, my wife, I was young then, believe it or not. I wasn't always old and bald and everything else, but we were young and had just had our first child. And we, in California, even back then, house prices were crazy.
Yeah.
So we were able to afford our first home in Lakewood. And my commute to South High was a long one. It was a very, very long commute. And so when I left South High, the opportunity came to go to Lakewood, which was about 2 miles from my house. And so they asked me to come in, and I started there as an assistant coach for a couple of years. I went in and assisted again. And this was a much bigger high school. I think at the time our enrollment was about 4,400. South High was probably 2,000 at the time, so it doubled. It was a different demographic. It was a much higher level of football. So for me to go in there and be able to learn for 2 years and kind of do different jobs that I didn't have time to do when I was a head coach. You know, I was able to coach defense or coach offense and so on and so forth. But it was that was predominantly the reason behind it is, and you know, coaches are always striving, whether it's high school, college, NFL. We always hear a lot about work-life balance.
Yeah.
And for me, I was fortunate that at that time I kind of was aware of that, because there's a lot of demands on a young father and a young husband with kids, and you got to make money and you got to pay the house payment, and now you want your family to be happy. So those are all very important factors. So I've always kept that in mind as I hire assistant coaches, is that the first thing I want to do is, like, is your family good with this? Is this going to be good for your family? So it's, that was a good situation for me to go into for a couple of years before I was named the head coach there, to kind of learn the situation, to get my feet underneath me and to realize, okay, this is a different dynamic now. Now we had some dudes and I could do things here at Lakewood I couldn't do at South Florida. And so it allowed me to expand even more as a coach, and do some different things that maybe I never really looked at before. And then getting exposed to different levels of competition. At that time, we were at the highest level in Southern California, was really good for me.
Now, when you talked about work-life balance, which is something that's extremely important to me and important to the coaches that I talk to. I love when guys kind of highlight that part of it. Just, at this point in time, you're still a young guy. How did you have that foresight to say, hey, you know what, I'm in this good situation as the head ball coach at this spot, but I'm spending an hour and a half, 2 hours in the car every day? Like, just where did that come from for you to have that foresight? Was mentorship or, just something you realized?
I don't know. I was fortunate. I think I was just lucky in that, Southern California will force you to do some things sometimes that maybe you wouldn't have to do in a small town somewhere else. So I was able to, understand that commute, I mean, it takes away so much time of your productivity for the day, whether it be as a father or as a husband or as a football coach or as a teacher. You got to remember, you got a lot of jobs you're doing at this point. There's only so many hours in the day. So I don't know. I like to say I was smart. I knew about it and everything else. I think it just kind of worked out for me that way. Yeah. And I always wanted it to be convenient. I wanted my kids to be able to come to the school I was coaching at. So when I was at Lakewood, my boys were at elementary school. And after elementary school was close to our high school, they would walk over to the high school and do their homework and then come out to ball practice. Yeah. And to me, that was invaluable. That was a very valuable thing. And my wife was working, so we avoided some daycare issues. There's a lot of things that went into it. It just worked out as a great situation for me. So, I think a lot of times as young coaches, we want to coach so bad. We put ourselves in bad positions, and we put ourselves in positions that create a lot of stress, and makes you less effective as a coach and as a husband and as a father than you could be. So I was fortunate to be able to kind of get in that situation where I could kind of balance everything as much as you can. I mean, you still got, there were still 12, 13-hour days, things like that, but right. It's a little easier when your boys are around you, or your wife can come pick them up for practice, and it makes things a little easier. So I think as young coaches, that's, and we all want to coach. We all want to get into great situations, and I've been in those too, where I'm like, oh man, I'm gonna do this, and I go, oh, I should have done it. It's just a tough situation here, so it's important. I think I was just fortunate. I like to say I was smart, but I think I just got lucky.
No doubt, and I appreciate you sharing that, because I think you kind of said it. Guys just want to coach. They want to coach. They want to be around ball. And you get an opportunity and you just say yes. And sometimes you don't think about how does this impact my family? How does this impact my kids? How does this impact my sleep, my ability to come in and do the best job? And I was sitting on a panel speaking to somebody at one point, and I said that. I was like, every job you don't have to just say yes to. You need to interview them, interview the situation. Yeah. And those guys looked at me like I was crazy. And I'm like, yeah, you might not get it now, but you're going to get it one day. I promise you. And
they will. It's important. And that's why one thing as a head coach, I always wanted my assistants to feel comfortable bringing their kids, bringing their wife. It's open. Bring them, because as much time as you can get with them, you need to get with them.
That's right. That's right. Now, you mentioned you were able to kind of get settled in there, and you were named the head coach in, I believe, 2002 there. And that run was quite special, right? 35-11, 5 playoff appearances, ranked in the U.S. National Top 25 in 2004, coached in 2003 and 2005, 605 All-Star game. Just kind of a magical run there, still to be very early in your career. How were you able to kind of take off like that at the varsity level in a much more competitive league?
Well, I think I went into the situation at the right time. Lakewood had good athletes. We maybe didn't have the structure that we needed, when I came in. We didn't have maybe the vision. And then I was very fortunate in that I had some really, really phenomenal football players. In 2004, we had a pair of linebackers, and our defense we gave up 8 points a game. And, we probably should have won the whole damn thing. I probably screwed it up a little bit. From the coaching standpoint, but it was a very, very special group. And so we were able to build that expectation of success. And so we were able to win more games in 5 years than they had in whole school history and everything else, just through expectation. We expected to win. And we had the players to do it. And Lakewood at the time was a very supportive community, very kind of involved community. Yeah. And that's a very big intangible out here in California. See, Texas and other small towns, it's like that it's not like that everywhere out here. You get a lot of commuter stuff and everything else. And it's one of the things that's been special at most of the stops I've been at, is that the community is very involved and very supportive.
So now after this, kind of special run there, which is a special place for you as Carson High School. You're currently there now, but this is your first stint. You head over to Carson in 2006. I got to ask the question on these transitions, and I don't know California's massive. If anybody's ever looked at a map before, some of these states you can bounce around a bunch of high schools and be in the same house, the whole time. I don't know the layout of Carson, where Carson is in Merchant, but what went into the decision to once again make another transition?
Well, one is that it became more of an administrative decision for me. I was not in alignment with the administration, given our success and what it's going to take to continue that success. We were in the league. We're in Long Beach Poly's league.
Oh, wow.
So
okay.
that's enough said, right? You just like, well, for us to get over that hump, it's going to take some special effort. And I thought we could do it. I'm not so sure they did. So that created me to look elsewhere. Carson my house is probably right in the middle of Carson and Lakewood. Oh. So it was just the same direction, same distance, the other direction.
Okay.
Different animals, a little bit smaller school, fantastic athletes, history of phenomenal athletes. And different district, LA City district. So the support wasn't quite as good financially and everything else. But I thought that the one thing they had is the community. The community of Carson is extremely special. It's a very, very tradition rich, many generations kind of community. And I thought, they had not had the success that I thought they could have. So that became an opportunity for me, again, kind of fulfilling those other things for me where I was still close to home. My commute wasn't bad. The community was supportive. So I was able to go there, and we were able to turn that around and have a really, really good run there as well. So.
You may mention, you talked about coaching it in the inner city there at South High School, and then kind of more in the suburban type of environment there at Lakewood. But just bouncing around and having different types of kids in your locker room. I had a coach one time say to me, every school has its warts. Every last school has a negative that they're griping about. And every last school has a positive that makes it so special. When you're bouncing around these different schools and you got different kids, different demographics, they respond differently. How are you able to kind of be that chameleon and adapt your coaching style?
Well, I think, and again, the one thing I think that attracted me is the actual difference in all those situations. South High was very affluent, very kind of isolated, very affluent community. Lakewood was kind of more of a working middle class. Carson was more of inner city, kind of on the edge thing. But I think even though the situations are different, kids really weren't different. Everybody kept asking me, what's the difference? I go, the kids all want the same thing. They want to be loved. They want to be supported. They want to be coached. They want to be taught. They want to be held accountable. They want it all. I found that that group of kids from all those different schools, they all really wanted the same thing. And that's why I love football, is because football delivers those things to them. It gives them that vessel to experience all those things I just mentioned, and that they all want. And they still all want. They wanted it when I started. They still want it now. It's just there's different influences that affect how that's perceived.
Yeah.
But I thought that the main differences were, one is expectation levels of each school. Why can't we be good? And Carson had a great tradition. So when we became good, it was like, oh, it's expected. I'm there. Good. I like that. That's good. It's just, a lot of people don't like that expectation. It's like, yeah, we should be good. We have great players. We have great support. We have a great community. There's nothing that should keep us from being successful. So, I think that even those situations were so much different. They really weren't. The kids were the same, and they wanted the same things, and they were, they just wanted to give me a chance to be successful. And as much as they think they don't, they want that difficulty. They want that daily routine. They want that structure. They want that to just tell me what I got to do. Mm-hmm. And I'll do it, because we're not going to ask the kid to do something he can't do. And I'd always tell my coaches, I said, listen, if we're having trouble doing something, maybe we're asking the kid to do more than he can, or, there's something wrong, because the kid will do it. I guarantee if the kid can do it, he's going to do it.
Yeah.
He's going to do it for us. And so, it's either, he can't do it, or we're not teaching it right. He's not understanding what we need him to do. So, it's been like that everywhere I've been. And then after Carson, it's kind of interesting. I went to Loyola, which is it's a private school, very academic oriented private school. Great tradition. I actually beat them when I was at Lakewood in the Division I playoffs one year, which I think probably opened their eyes to me a little bit. But when that job came around, a legendary coach was retired, and Loyola is a very close-knit, incestuous community. So I was the first outsider, so to speak. I had no Loyola ties other than my oldest son was going to school there. And so I went there. And again, even though it was that's downtown LA, super affluent high school, great academics, great reputation of athletics, just a great facility, all boys school, no girls now. Even though that was as different as it could be from Lakewood or Carson or even South Torrance, it wasn't different. The kids all wanted the same things, and it was, but it made me as a coach now have to develop other things, because even though we weren't maybe we had good athletes, and I got kids that played for me. Cody Whitfield is now the coach at UCLA, and Jerry Heisel was at UCLA, and so a lot of kids that were good athletes and very, very good football players, but they were so intelligent. So, and those kids were academically, very, very, very bright on the top end of it. And so that allowed us to do some things that maybe you couldn't do with other kids, even though the other kids might have been more athletic, but they could handle some. So now it kind of changes your focus on as a coach and makes you do things that mentally are taxing. But man, we could create a lot of problems for opponents because we could do so many different things and do them well.
Yeah.
So it was a really, really interesting situation for me. And on top of that, I was able to coach my son. And everybody goes, "Oh man, that's going to be tough." And what that taught me is that I coach every kid like he's my son.
Yeah.
Everybody goes, "Oh, you're harder." I said, "I'm not harder on my son than on anybody else." I go, "I expect those same things out of everybody else, and they know that." I saw Cody at the convention, and he hugged me, and he knows, that I expected the same things out of everybody that I expected out of my son, and that was a blessing to be able to go through that experience. I wouldn't trade that for the world.
Yeah, you kind of brought up two questions there, and one isn't a question, so I'll go ahead and kind of highlight this. I think talking about that Carson job, the previous 2 seasons prior to you getting there, they won 6 total games, and
Right.
then 3 out of the 4 seasons while you were there, y'all won 9+ games in in each individual season. And I'll turn this into a little bit of a question, because the high school thing I think is so awesome because you can't recruit. You can't go and say,
No.
"Hey, come on, brother, come on, superstar quarterback, and change my program." You kind of have to do it within. And so I'll mesh the 2 questions together. I think you talked about the different type of schools, and you talked about how the kids are pretty much the same. I just kind of bouncing around the profession myself. I know on the other side, sometimes that thing can be different. The administration side, you got the schools,
Yeah.
then you got the support side, the administrative side. When you start looking at a inner city school like Carson and the expectations and what they're willing to pour in a program, and then you look at Loyola, and then you look at Lakewood, just talk about the differences there and how you kind of navigate people's willingness to support.
It is interesting, and a lot of it I found is based on tradition and expectation. The more they have a tradition of winning and expectation of winning, the more they naturally give into the programs. When they don't know what that is, whether it's at South Torrance or even Carson when I got there, there's certain things it takes. Obviously the support it takes support. I don't care where you are, you have to have support. If you can be the best coaching staff in the world, if you don't have support, it ain't going to work. It's just too much work. So I think that a lot of it is just the history and then it's what do you teach those kids to convey and to believe? Because that becomes part of it too. So at Carson, they had a lot of success early on, back when they first started, and Coach Bonego, he's historical across the nation. He won so many games, but they didn't have that for a while. And so you kind of lose that. And then once you get it back, you're like, oh, that's right. And it's like, okay, but in order to get to that level, it takes this. We need more assistant coaches. We need better equipment. That's just part of things that you need. I don't think Alabama's hurting for footballs or equipment or assistant coaches, as an example. They understand it takes what it takes.
Right.
It just takes what it takes. And some places are more willing to do that than others. Now, it's not always financial. Everybody thinks, it's just money. It's not. It's not about the financial part of it. There's a philosophical and a personal part of it as far as the support goes. That you have to. Everybody has to be aligned on the same page to understand. If you're going to achieve it, you can't be. Well, they want this and you want this, and then you're kind of fighting everything, and it's hard enough just playing the opponent on the field.
Right.
You don't want to be playing all these other guys. So it's a different animal, and it's not necessarily financial. So a lot of schools would think, oh, well, I'll give you this money, and then we expect it. It's like, no. It doesn't. That doesn't work like that. We need other things besides. Now that's important. Don't get me wrong, it's important, but we also need support in the sense of like for when I was an off-campus coach, I need on-campus position. I need assistant coaches to get some on-campus position. I need kids here. I need coaches here on this campus for our kids. Well, some places would do that. Some places wouldn't. That's support. That's a great example of support that most people say, well, that's a no. Well, it's not a no-brainer everywhere. Some places can't do it or they don't want to do it. So I found that it took the same things to be successful everywhere. It really, really did. It just sometimes those things were made easier through the support and the belief, or they were made a little bit more difficult. You had to kind of convince them that this is what it takes.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, you kind of segue to Loyola, and I don't want to skip this question. I'm interested, and I really appreciate your transparency about a lot of stuff. Well, somebody said something on one of these podcasts a few months ago, and I thought it was kind of a cool line. It was, sometimes it sucks to be the guy after the guy. You had this guy that was there for a long time.
Right.
What was that like for you at a program that, like you said, you had no affiliation to? They've had this longtime head coach who's had some success and yada, yada, yada. How does it what do you do when you go step into a situation like that?
Well, for me, I've always, and anybody that's worked with me, I'm always going to be me.
Yeah.
I don't think I could try to be somebody. I couldn't try to be him. I had to be me. And I think for any young coaches that want to, you got to be you. You have to coach to yourself. You got to be true to yourself and your beliefs and all those things. And so it was interesting. And as I look back on it, I was much more prophetic there than I probably realized at the time. But the landscape of football was changing, and high school football, especially out here in California at that time. And we were a private school, and private schools allegedly could recruit, and you could go get players. And so, and so there's an interesting story about St. John Bosco, who I'm sure you heard of. They've been a national power now for Jason Negro for a while. First year we played Jason. I played Jason when I was at Loyola at St. John Bosco. We beat the brakes off him. Next year, he beat the brakes off us, like with a team that I'd never. I'm like, well, where'd this come from? And so that school made a decision to build through athletics and get the best people they could. And that was kind of the start of the arms war, I guess, out here in the private schools, where now it's like, we got to get people. Well, Loyola, and again, I wouldn't change a thing. It's a fantastic institution. Okay? I cannot say anything bad about the institution. There's a very high entrance requirement at Loyola. Some of the guys that you need to beat a Bosco or a Mater Dei, they're not going to pass that entrance requirement. Yeah. Oh, yeah. And so exceptions, needed to be made if that's the level you want to compete at. And I was good with either way because I loved, I loved what it stood for. I loved the institution, what it stood for in the academics and developing young men and men for others and all that stuff. But I also wanted to win football games, and they had won Division I championships before. I go, you didn't win them now, not in this landscape.
Right. This
is a different world. It's coming right now. And so we either got to adapt or we got to decide that we're not Division I. Maybe I go, how many national titles is Stanford? How many national titles is Northwestern? That doesn't mean you can't be good. I'm not saying you can't be good. But I don't know that Northwestern's going to beat Alabama. That's just the reality. So you have to adjust your expectations and stuff. So for me, when I went and followed Coach Brady, that was kind of the change that was coming in high school football. I went on a really interesting time, especially to be at a private school. The first private school I've ever been at. It's a different world. I think I had 22 assistant coaches. For most assistant coaches I had somewhere else. It's quite double that. And we freshman teams who did so many good kids. It was just a different animal. So they kind of were, they're very traditional. They were kind of, we want to compete with them. You're gonna have to do something. You got to make a decision somewhere. So I didn't think that philosophically we were on the same page. I don't think I would be able to do and deliver to them what they wanted, given the setup restrictions that we had. I just don't think this would work. I don't know how. I was still teaching 4 classes. Most of the coaches in our league not teaching at all. I go, I'm giving a 4-hour day to these coaches that are these are the best coaches in the country. That's tough to overcome, and on top of the fact that we don't have the players. So, I mean, let's be realistic here. There's only so much I can do. So, when I left there, it was more for that reason than anything else. But I love the school, and since then, of course, it's worked out to where they're a lower division, and they can.
Yeah.
And I go, that's what it should be. And the school hasn't had to change. You're good. It's awesome. So, but sometimes, change like that of that comes hard for them and for everybody. Change is hard for everybody, just people, but for institutions. And so I think that's worked out well for everybody. I had a great experience. I wouldn't change it for the world, but I also learned a ton of stuff about that private sector and everything.
Yeah, no, that's huge. I think, I went to a school. It was FBS public school, but they came off some APR issues. And along with those APR issues, we could only accept a certain type of kid within our athletics program. And it was a roadblock. When you sat there and you looked at your rival school that's in your same state right down the street, they can offer this kid and get him in, and you can't. And, you're sitting there and you're struggling with that. And then I spent some time at a Pioneer League school, which is high academic, expensive costs. It's just some of the things that kind of come with it, and sometimes you got to make some adjustments. Either you do or they do. But typically, I think both sides are able to identify at some point in time when in or when not it's gonna work. So, anywho, after I appreciate you answering that. Kind of just being real with that, because I think it's great that you spoke up and you said all this stuff, and ultimately they're back having success. But yeah, they had to drop a level, like you mentioned. Not saying that the coach is always going to be right in those situations, but if you see something, say something. And I think that's cool that you were willing to do that.
Kind of how I've been everywhere. I'm going to kind of. I got to say what I see.
Right.
I'm not saying I'm right. I don't know everything. I've got to. Otherwise, if I say it, and I need you to teach me why it's different.
Right.
Teach me I'm wrong. Just show me why I'm wrong. And that'd be a difference.
Yeah. Amen. Now, after that stop there, Loyola, you spent a couple years at you might have to pronounce. But yeah, Peninsula. Oh man, that makes me feel bad. Peninsula High School there in Cali. Obviously you make the change just from Loyola, but this is a school. I think in your first year you doubled the win total pretty quickly. So what was the challenges of that job?
That was probably, if there's a job that I should know, that was probably it. Not that it was a bad job.
Yeah.
Great people. Situation, a little bit further commute for me, really challenged athletically, but you're playing comparable schools, so you can see great community support, all of that stuff. But that was a situation where my expectation level was really high. It just come from Loyola, like I said. So I probably didn't do a very good job of adjusting to where I was at. We had success, again, I think there's certain commonalities of success for the kids are the same. They want the same thing. I still see those kids today, and they have a great experience. And so those things were interesting. Again, it was kind of an academic school. That kind of fit into my Loyola background. It was a public school, but a very affluent public school that's kind of isolated. Private. So that was a situation where, you get, as a coach, got really frustrated because we couldn't do the things we needed to be successful. We just couldn't do it. We didn't have the kids. And again, it doesn't matter. Sport was great. Sometimes it doesn't happen. I don't know. You don't have the dudes, you don't have the dudes.
That's right.
And so that became very frustrating to me. So that was, even though it was a great situation, I loved it. People are still deep friends with a lot of people I met there. So, but that was a job that was very tough for me.
Now, I think your last two stops, I think, is pretty interesting. You returned back to Lakewood for a few years. You returned back to Carson for a few years, where you still are at this moment. I know you're not in that head coaching roles. You're kind of entering the retirement stage a little bit, but you spent the last 4 or 5 years there as the head coach there at Carson. What's different the second run at both these spots?
It was much more different at Lakewood than at Carson. I went back to Lakewood primarily for teaching position. It's hard to explain, but out here teachers are, the health benefits and such are part of your package and everything else. I was able to get a much better package at Lakewood than I had previously. So, and it was sad to see that they were not as good as they were when I left. So I went back to try to rebuild that and try to get them. And we had some moderate success, but what I found, it wasn't the same school. Everything had changed. Yeah. Before, when I left, we were a community school. We're surrounded by houses, and that all our kids came from, they could walk to practice and walk. When I went back, one year I asked my team, how many of you live right here in Lakewood? It was 3 kids out of 56 or 70 or whatever it was. There was 3 kids. And so it became much more of a transient situation. And that's where I learned how important that community aspect is, and how important that is to everybody else. So it was tough. So after 3 years, I was so frustrated. I said, I can't do this anymore. And then so I resigned from there. But then Carson called me, the old AD, Mike Klein was my AD when I was at Carson before, and he was a fantastic guy. I mean, great man. His son was now the AD at Carson. And so they called me and said, can you come take a look and see what you think and blah, blah, blah. And man, it was so, I left Carson. We were in the city finals. I mean, we were good. We were good. And when I went back, it was just a shell. And I wasn't so sure after that Lakewood experience I wanted to coach anymore. It was that rough on me at Lakewood that second time around, because my memory of what it was and what it should be was, man, this is completely what happened.
Yeah.
The facility was the same, and everything physically it just wasn't the same.
Yeah.
So I kind of went back to Carson with the understanding that I'm going to get us back to where we need to be so you can have some future success. But I'm not doing this for too long, because this is just, this rebuilding stuff over and over. It's like, why didn't you just keep it going when I left? They don't. Sometimes you ask them that and they don't know, because they don't know what they don't know. I guess I don't know. So we were able to go back, and man, it was then COVID happened, and it was during COVID. So when I went back there, my first year, I go to practice. This is the honest to God truth, Mario. We had 8 players, eight football players at Carson High School. I'm like, where's everybody at? Oh, they transferred this and that. So that first year, we went, and I just started getting people to campus, and we ended up fielding in one team. We didn't have a JV team. We didn't have anybody. We just had one team. And I think we were able to go 4-6 or 3-5 or something like that. I don't know what it was, but we had a decent year considering what we had. And then the following years, I was able to assemble a staff. We were able to get out of COVID and get through all those protocols and all that stuff. And now we kind of got back to where we were, built the expectation level again. The structure is there again. We've been in the semifinals the past 2 years. They're going to win the city title this year. I know they are. I know it. They're going to be the best team. And it's hard to leave that, but at the same time, sometimes I need to get out of a situation so they can take the next step, if that makes sense. You know what I mean? Yeah. So for me, I really believe that's going to happen there. I think that they needed that. The voice it took for us to get from where we were to where we are now is going to be a little bit different than the voice it takes to get over that top.
Yeah.
So I think that's going to be good for them, and I think that they'll have a lot of success this year because the foundation's there. We have a strong JV program. We have the community's back. Everything's good. So all the elements are in place for them to have good success, which is what I wanted. That's why I went back for that, and I told the AD, I said, look, I've done what I needed to do. It's you guys got to keep this going now.
Amen. Well, I know you still be on the sidelines, but man, what a heck of a run, a heck of a career. You don't know how blessed I am to kind of sit here and do this. I'm happy we sat down and did this, because I've talked to you for since 2018. I had no idea. I mean, I kind of always knew you were at Lakewood or Carson. That's the only time frame I've known you, but I didn't know the second stint and all that kind of stuff, man. So this has been enjoyable. But before I do let you go, man, I want to hit on a couple important things. I just mentioned 2018 is when I first had the opportunity to meet you. You stepped in as the chairman of the AFCA National High School Coaches Committee, and I mean, what a phenomenal job that you've done with that. And I guess this is probably the best place for me to pass on all the praise I get for it. Everybody, hey, good job. I love this. And then you guys just take it and run with it, man. And why was it important to you to be involved with the AFCA to that capacity?
Well, I went to my first AFCA convention when I was in Anaheim. I don't know when it was, early 2000s. One of my assistant coaches took me, and I fell in love. It's everything that I think embodies football. It's all for the right thing. I believe in the mission of it, and I believe football is a special vessel to get. I think young men need football now more than ever. That's my true belief, and the things that the game teaches. And I respect so much the way the AFCA, educates coaches in all aspects of coaching and of life, not just football. But I just wanted to be a part of it and help any way I could. And I was fortunate to work with some great people. The committee we have is phenomenal. You ask me and I ask them, and we get it done.
Yes,
and that's how it is. And so it's been a really, really fun process to be a part of. Now with Coach Bowles, it started this high school executive council, and with state association leaders trying to even increase this high school involvement more. And Coach Bowles done a great job taking steps to get the membership of high school coaches increased. because again, it's so valuable for them. It's been so valuable for me as a young coach as I developed to hear all those great coaches and to go see them and meet them and be around them and hear all the same things that I felt. Like that's what they do. So it's that consistency and continuity for me was extremely important. And I don't know where else you're going to get that but the AFCA. I just don't think there's another organization out there that addresses the things that we need to hear as coaches. It's not X's and O's because everybody has different players. Everybody has it's not that stuff. I mean, we can sit here and whoever has the napkin last is going to win. That kind of thing. But it's been a blessing for me to be involved in it as much as I have been, and hopefully I'll continue to do so.
Yeah, and I say this just as something I thought was really cool when you guys were down here last month or a couple months ago. Especially when I go sit in the high school coaches, sessions at the convention, and you talk about ball or you talk about winning at an inner city program, or you talk about all these specific problems, but it's all problems that I can see in my little window as well, as a bounce around here in Texas. But we sat down and I talked to you for a little bit, and you're telling me what's going on in Cali, and I'm like, what the heck, and then I talked to the guy in Boyson in Nebraska, and he's telling me, these very unique things that are going on in Nebraska and Jersey, and then you realize that it's you got the Power 5 conference and G5, and it's like you got 50 of these just very unique situations that are going on all over the country, and I'm just happy that we're kind of getting a voice together in the same room and trying to figure this thing out. But I did want to add, I think probably the most awesome thing that came out of that deal was, as we're trying to increase our high school group, that anybody that's a part of their state association can get a promo code and be a part of the AFCA membership for $25. Which is
the best deal of you're ever going to get in anything. It's the amount of benefits that a coach will get for that $25 is unprecedented. It's the amount of growth they're going to get. And again, if they can attend, it's tough for high school coaches to attend the convention. Absolutely. It is. It's hard for me all those years, so it's tough. But for $25, I think it's going to be it's going to be a great hit, and it's going to really increase the membership. And I hope that more coaches are exposed to the AFCA and all the things they stand for, the professionalism, the ethics, all the important things.
Amen, Coach. Well, we appreciate you representing all those important things, not just for us, but for those thousands of kids that you've coached over the past, almost touching 40 years here. We at 40?
I'm at 35.
Oh, at 35, yeah. So we're heading that direction, man. And so all those lives you've been able to impact, those coaches you've been able to mentor, and then just the assistance that you've given me, man. We appreciate you, man, more than I can express right here. So, I appreciate you hopping on. I look forward to seeing you up in Charlotte again for another year, and can't wait to do that.
I appreciate you, Mario. Keep doing all the work you guys do, and just know that we really appreciate the AFCA, and there's a lot of coaches out here that would do whatever you guys need.
Yeah, amen. I appreciate you, Coach. Later.
Take care.
CoachComm has been delivering tough headsets for tough teams for more than 31 years. It's why 97% of FBS teams and thousands of high schools across the country rely on CoachComm. Get the best for your team. Visit CoachComm.com for more info.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of Inside the Headset, presented by CoachComm. If you'd like to learn more about this week's episode, head over to AFCA.com. There, you can access every episode and find corresponding show notes. Remember, you can catch every episode of Inside the Headset, presented by CoachComm, on wherever you get your podcasts, including Spotify, Apple, and YouTube. While you're there, we'd love for you to take a moment to rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast. Your feedback helps us improve and grow. Keep up with the latest news by following us on social media. Connect with us at Inside the Headset, and remember to tag us when you share your favorite episodes. For more updates on all things AFCA, be sure to follow the @WeAreAFCA social media accounts. If you're not a part of the AFCA community yet, visit AFCA.com to join thousands of NFL, college, and high school coaches nationwide and across the globe. Elevate your coaching game with an AFCA membership. You'll gain exclusive access to the annual AFCA convention, magazine, digital library, and AFCA Insider email. Stay up to date with the latest stories and news on the AFCA website. More than just a convention, the AFCA offers continuous education, guidance, networking, and more. Celebrate the past and shape the future with the AFCA. It's about fostering exceptional coaches who create outstanding teams and even better individuals. Invest in your skills and make a lasting impact today by engaging with the AFCA. Your journey starts here.